Before the world falls quiet, there's a voice. Not yours, not mine, but something left behind. Something soft, something forgotten. If you listen closely, it may help you fall asleep, not just into rest, but into a memory wrapped in dreams. I'm your host, Abdu. If this story soothes your night, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so more voices like this can find you again. Share it with a friend who needs gentle sleep tonight. And if your heart feels a little quieter now, leave a like to let it know it mattered. Now, close your eyes and let the story begin.
I was the pillow beneath her final dream. Part 1. They placed me beneath her head the night the snow returned. Not the heavy kind that silences the city, but the soft, whispered flakes that fall like forgotten lullabies from the sky. It was quiet in her room, too quiet, as though time had curled up in the corner, asleep. I am just a pillow, but I remember. I remember the weight of every sigh she gave me. I remember the way her hair spilled over me like rivers of night, and I remember the last time she whispered anything at all. The girl, her name was Lila, had always been gentle. She chose me from the store shelf, not because I was the softest, but because I had a slate dent in my corner. Imperfect, she had smiled. Like me. Back then, we lived in a small apartment on the 6th floor of an old building, the kind that moaned when the wind blew. The heater rattled through the winters and the walls held on to summer like secrets. But Lila made everything warm. Even silence felt like music when she was around. Her bedtime routine was always the same. She would light a single candle on her desk, lavender scent, and hum a tune that had no words. Then she would talk to me, not out loud, not always, but in her thoughts, in the way her head nestled into me, I could hear everything. Today was long, she would sigh, or, I wish I knew what I was doing with my life. Sometimes, will anyone remember me when I'm gone? I never had answers. Pillows aren't built for wisdom. But I listened. I held her. And then came the boy. His name was Omar. He was laughter with eyes too tired for his age. When he visited, the room filled with his voice, with jokes that made her forget to be afraid. He called her Little Flame, said her spirit could light up dark corners in people. I never liked him, because I knew she did. One night she cried into me. Her tears soaked my seams. She said, "He doesn't love me, not like I love him." But she kept hoping. That's what she always did. Hope like the world wasn't broken. Like maybe if she hoped hard enough, it would heal. Time passed in pages. The candle burned shorter each evening. Then one day, everything changed. She came home quiet, not the tired kind of quiet, the hollow kind. She didn't hum. She didn't light the candle. She just lay down, face to the wall, and pulled the blanket over her head. I felt the weight of her not speaking. It was heavier than anything she had ever said. The days grew colder, her smiles less frequent. Omar stopped coming. Sometimes she would stay in bed all day. I tried to be enough to hold her, to comfort her, but pillows have limits. We can cradle heads, not hearts. One evening she whispered to me again, I think I'm disappearing. I wanted to scream, to shake her awake, to tell her no, that she was here, that she mattered. But I am just fabric and feather. Still, I listened harder than ever. She started writing letters at night, to no one in particular. She'd fold them into tiny squares and hide them inside books. I knew each word because I was there for every one of them. Words like, I miss who I used to be. And maybe the world doesn't have room for soft things. And I'm tired of pretending I'm okay. Then one night, that night, she came home with a small bag and eyes that looked like the end of something. She placed the bag gently beside the bed. Then she laid her head on me, more slowly than usual, as if it were a goodbye. She said, I don't want to feel any more. Outside, the snow began to fall. Inside, the candle flickered for the last time. She closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed. And I, the silent witness, did what I always did. I held her, not knowing if she would ever wake again. But I remember everything. I am the pillow beneath her final dream.
Part 2. The quiet weight of her breath. If I could speak, I would tell you how breath can weigh more than silence. That night, the first night she laid her head upon me, I felt the world shift. Her body sank into the mattress with an exhausted sigh, but it was her head that fell into me like a secret, gently, as if unsure whether it was allowed to rest, as if rest was a luxury she hadn't earned. She didn't move for a long time, just breathed, softly, but not peacefully, not yet. There was a tremor in her breathing, the kind that comes after crying. Not loud sobs, no, those were gone by then. These were the quiet, post-storm inhales, the kind of breath that shudders at the end, like it's still deciding whether to break again. I felt her tears soak into my fabric, without warning, no apology, just a sudden hot drop, and then another, and another. I didn't mind. I wanted to be something she could cry into. I wanted to absorb whatever grief she couldn't carry anymore. I wanted to take from her the sadness she was too tired to name. But I was only a pillow. All I could do was be there. She didn't sleep for hours. Her body stayed still, but her mind wandered far. I could feel it in the way her head subtly shifted, barely noticeable, like someone pacing in place. And then finally, a sigh, deep, long, surrendered. Her breath deepened, her muscles softened, her jaw unclenched, and she slipped beneath the tide of sleep. That's when I felt her first dream. No, I didn't see it. I can't see. But dreams, when they're real, leave impressions even I can feel. They ripple through a sleeping body like warm waves. Her face twitched faintly. Her hands, clenched tight beneath her chest, slowly loosened. She was somewhere else now. I hoped it was kinder. In the stillness, I listened to her breathing. In, out, in, out. There's something holy in that rhythm. I know she didn't feel holy,
She probably felt small or broken or undeserving. People like her often do. But to me, every breath she took felt like a hymn, a soft defiance against everything trying to quiet her. And each exhale was a story untold. She dreamed long that night. She murmured once, a name I couldn't catch, a whisper lost in the folds of my fabric, but it held weight, memory, maybe regret, or love. It's strange how those things sound the same when spoken half asleep. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that only comes after pain. Not silence exactly, but absence. No music, no television, no phone vibrating on the nightstand. Just her and me, and a world that had, for one brief night, left her alone. In that hush, I began to learn her, the shape of her skull, the softness of her hair, the way she curled to one side, always the same, as if protecting something fragile inside her. I learned that she carried sorrow in her neck, a tension that didn't disappear even in sleep. I learned that she sighed every time the dream changed. I learned that she had been holding on far too long. If I could speak, I would have told her this: "You are allowed to rest now." But she didn't need words. She had sleep. And I had purpose. By morning, the light was soft through the window. She stirred just slightly, and for a moment I thought she might rise. Instead, she pressed deeper into me. She wasn't ready to face the day. I understood. So I cradled her a little more tightly as stuffing and stitching can manage. I held the shape of her head with reverence. She deserved softness, even if she didn't believe it. Later, I would learn the rhythm of her days. She always returned late, the kind of late that smells like bus fumes and aching feet. She'd kick off her shoes in the dark, say nothing, let her bag drop to the floor with a thud that sounded more tired than angry. She never turned on the overhead light, only a small lamp by the bed. She liked shadows, maybe because they didn't ask anything of her. And every night, after brushing her teeth and forgetting to eat, she'd collapse into the bed and find me again. Each night, I became a little more familiar. Each night, her breathing became a little deeper, a little steadier. The tears came less often, not because she wasn't sad anymore, but because sleep began to trust her again. And so did I. One evening, she brought home a book, a novel, worn, dog-eared. She placed it beside me on the pillow and whispered, "Let's try again." I don't know who she was talking to, maybe herself, maybe the world, but the softness in her voice was new, like someone carefully picking up a part of themselves they'd long buried. That night, she read 3 pages before falling asleep, and for the first time, she smiled in her sleep. Just a little, but I felt it. I don't know her name. She never said it aloud, but I knew her fears, her weight, her loneliness, and slowly, her healing. She never spoke to me directly, but every night she let her head fall into me like it was the only place that wouldn't break. And every night I held her like a promise I couldn't make, only keep. If I could speak, I'd tell her this: even silence loves you.
Part 3. When Silence Learned Her Name. I remember the night the house lost its voice. No footsteps echoed in the hallway. No humming drifted from the kitchen. No soft whispers behind doors. Even the wind outside, which usually rattled the old shutters like a bored musician tapping on glass, held its breath. And on that night, she came home in a way that felt different. She didn't drop her bag at the door. She didn't toss her coat on the chair or kick off her shoes with a relieved sigh. Instead, she paused, her hand on the doorknobs for what felt like a full minute. Then she slowly stepped inside, like someone unsure whether they were returning to a memory or entering a stranger's dream. I waited for her upstairs where I always did, where I always lay, silent, soft, present. She didn't come up right away. She walked the rooms first. I heard the faint creaks of the old floorboards, one by one, like she was reacquainting herself with each step, each corner, each shadow. And when she finally climbed the stairs, her feet were hesitant, as if every stair asked her a question. She entered the room with eyes heavy but open. Her gaze drifted to the shelves, the curtains, the little lamp on the side table. Then finally it rested on the bed, on me. And that night she didn't say anything. She simply sat down. Then, slowly, she lay back, her head sinking into me, and whispered nothing at all. But I could feel the weight of her silence, heavier than words, denser than tears. That night she didn't cry. She didn't fidget or turn over restlessly like she often did. She just lay there, staring up, unmoving. And I wondered, what had the world taken from her that left her so still? The days that followed blurred into quiet. She no longer rushed. No more alarms, no phone calls, no music, no late-night laughter with a friend on speakerphone. Her life had slowed, or maybe paused altogether. She began sleeping earlier, curling into bed while the sky outside was still blushing with orange and purple. And when she rested her head on me, her dreams came slower, softer, like shy animals creeping out of hiding. One night, as the moonlight painted silver streaks across the ceiling, she whispered a name into me, a name I didn't recognize. Elliot. It wasn't loud, just a breath pushed through lips half asleep, then silence again. But that name stayed with me. It pulsed in my fabric. It hummed beneath every feather and thread. Who was Elliot? A memory? A mistake? A goodbye? She began talking in her sleep. Not full conversations, just pieces, phrases like, "Don't go too far," or "Wait, I wasn't done," or just, "Please." Each time I cradled her gently, absorbing every unfinished sentence, every shattered plea. I knew these weren't dreams. They were echoes, leftovers from something real, something lost. And I wanted, more than anything, to comfort her in my own quiet way. So I softened. I adjusted beneath her. I held her warmth through the night and refused to let the cold reach her. I did what pillows do best. I stayed. One evening, a strange thing happened. She brought out a box from under the bed, a box I hadn't seen in years. Inside were letters, old ones, Polaroid photos, a child's drawing with misspelled words, a crumpled hospital bracelet. She held them one by one, studied them not with fresh grief, but with tired reverence, like reading a story she already knew by heart, but couldn't stop revisiting. And then the music returned. Soft, almost hesitant, a scratchy old record player played a tune that made the walls remember dancing. She didn't sing along. She didn't cry. She just listened, her hands resting on me, still,
like I was the only part of the world she trusted to carry the weight of that song. That night, her dreams were different. They weren't filled with names or broken phrases. They were long sighs, gentle breaths, acceptance. But of course, the world didn't stay kind. Rain came again, and with it a letter. She read it at the window, quiet, her fingers trembling slightly, not from cold, but from something deeper. When she lay down that night, she clutched me tightly, pressing her cheek into me like I was the last familiar thing in a world that had changed shape again. And she whispered, "I don't know where to go next." And I wanted to say, "Stay." But I was only a pillow. So I simply stayed. That was enough. As the days rolled on, she changed in small, almost imperceptible ways. She stopped keeping her phone face down. She began lighting a candle in the evening. She started reading again, books with soft covers and watercolored illustrations. She was healing, not all at once, not loudly, but like a thread pulled through a needle, slow and purposeful. And every night, as she lay her head down, I welcomed her back with open softness, because I knew no matter where the day had taken her, no matter what memory had knocked on her door, she would always return to me. And I would always remember the name she whispered, even if she never said it again.
Part 4. The Whispers from the Window. I don't remember when the window began to whisper. Maybe it was after she cried for the third night in a row, or maybe after she stopped brushing her hair. But one thing I do remember is this: it always started when the moon was full. That night she lay on me like usual, soft, heavy with sadness. Her breath was quiet but uneven. Outside, the wind pushed gently against the glass. And then it came. A whisper. Not from her lips, not from a dream, but from the window. A soft voice, almost too soft to understand. "Are you still awake?" I thought I imagined it. She stirred slightly. Her hand tightened around the edge of the blanket. "Yes," she whispered back, so softly it barely escaped her lips. I felt her pulse quicken where her neck met my cover. She wasn't dreaming. She was answering. But the room was empty. Only me. Only her. And the window. The next night it happened again. "Why do you cry?" the voice asked. She didn't answer at first. I felt one tear slip down her cheek and soak into me like a tiny secret. Then she said, "Because I miss things that never happened." I didn't understand, but the window did. "Memories that never were?" it asked. "Yes, like someone who never came back, or the way my mother used to hum. I keep waiting to hear it again, but I know I never will." She was talking to it like it was old, like it had always been there, like it knew her. And maybe it did. The next few nights blurred together. She spoke to it every time the moon rose. I heard her voice stronger now, not cheerful, not healed, but steadier. The voice from the window never shouted, never argued. It only asked and listened.
One night, she told it everything. About the boy with the green scarf, about the letter that never came, about the day she almost jumped but didn't. I remember the silence that followed that last confession. The room went very still. Even the shadows paused. Then the window whispered, "You chose to stay. That matters." She said nothing back, but her breath slowed, her fingers loosened, and for the first time in weeks, she fell into a deep sleep. I cradled her. I felt the warmth of peace slowly returning to her skin. That night, I dreamed. Pillows don't dream, but somehow I did. In my dream, I saw a garden. She was there. She was older, but smiling. She walked barefoot on the grass, humming a melody that felt familiar. And beside her, not far, was a window, floating, watching, waiting. When I woke, the sun was rising. She was still asleep, and for the first time, she didn't cry.
Part 5. Whispers from the Hollow Room. I don't know how long the night had been. Perhaps time had folded itself in on us again, the way it sometimes did when her breath became slow and dream-tied. But I remember that night clearly, because it began with something different, a murmur in the quiet. She had just turned onto her side, her cheek pressing softly against me. The warmth of her breath created a tiny patch of heat that I held tightly, like a secret. Her arms curled inward, her knees pulled close, and though the room was silent, there was a hum I hadn't heard before. It wasn't from the heater or the wind pressing at the window. It came from her. She began to whisper words in her sleep. They weren't the usual sleep thighs and mumbles. These were full sentences, drifting up from some deep, unseen ocean inside her. Words like, "Don't forget the ribbon," and "He's still in the hallway." Her voice was low, childlike, almost unsure. Then the dream arrived. It came slowly, like a fog rolling into a field. I felt it before I heard or saw anything. My threads tingled, like I was being lifted through mist. Her breathing slowed, deepened, then a strange sound filled the air. A distant lullaby played on what sounded like a music box, half submerged in water. And then the room changed. We were no longer in her bed. We were standing, yes, standing, on a vast wooden floor. Above us nothing, just sky, endless pale lavender sky, with soft glowing clouds that moved like slow jellyfish. Around us old toys, wooden horses, cloth dolls, paper kites stuck in the boards. All of them silent. She stood beside me. Somehow I had arms in the dream, and I held her hand. She looked younger here, not a child, not quite an adult, maybe 10 or 11. Her eyes were wide, and she wore a yellow dress with little buttons shaped like stars. Then we heard the sound. Click, 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 click. It was not threatening, not loud, just odd, like claws on old wood. A moment later we saw it. From behind a large toy chest walked a cat. Not a normal one. It was tall, with impossibly long whiskers, and its fur shimmered between colors, gray, gold, and lavender. It blinked at her, slowly, like it knew her. And she whispered, "You came back." The cat walked toward her, brushing against her legs, purring with a rumble like an old train. She knelt and hugged it tightly, and for the first time in many dreams, she smiled. The smile melted something in me, but the dream wasn't over. From behind the walls, if you could call them that, came a voice. It was deep,
soft and warm, familiar. "Little one, don't forget who you are." She looked up. "Grandpa," she whispered. There was no answer, but the air trembled. A door appeared on the floor, not a scary door, a gentle one, made of old wood with carvings of birds and leaves. She stood and walked toward it, the cat following. She turned to me. "You can come too," she said, her voice trembling. I floated behind her as she opened the door. Inside was not a room, but a memory. She was in a kitchen, warm yellow light, a kettle steaming. A man with kind eyes and wrinkled hands handed her a biscuit shaped like a star. "You always liked these," he said. His voice was soft, slow. She reached out and touched his sleeve. "I missed you." "I know, but I never left." Then he looked at me, to the pillow. "You've been watching her this whole time, haven't you?" I didn't know how to answer, but he smiled. "She sleeps better when she feels something near." Then the memory folded like a page being turned, and we were back in the dream room, toys frozen mid-laughter, the cat licking its paw. She looked around, eyes brighter now, and then she said something that sent a breeze through the dream. "I think I'm ready to forgive." I didn't know what she meant, but I felt it. A release, like one knot among many had come undone. The dream faded, the soft purple sky dimmed, and I was once again beneath her head. The weight of her sorrow was just a little lighter. Outside the room, rain began to fall. Not heavy, just a quiet tapping, like a distant applause. The cat didn't return in the real world, but sometimes she looked toward the window and smiled at nothing in particular. And once she reached down and found an old drawing under her bed, a cat with lavender fur drawn in crayons. She pinned it to the wall without a word. The next night she slept even deeper. But there was something else. At dawn, just before the sun lifted fully, she turned in her sleep and whispered, "I remember now." And the way she said it made me feel like something long buried had been found. A piece of herself, a gentle piece. I held her head with care, as always, but inside I felt something strange, like maybe, just maybe, I was part of the dream now too, not just beneath her head, but within it.
Part 6. The Scent of Rain and the Silence Between Heartbeats. I remember the sound before I remember the sight. It was soft, like a sigh, slipping beneath the closed door. Rain, not a storm, not thunder. Just a gentle, steady rain brushing against the window like fingertips longing to be let in. The kind of rain that wraps a room in quiet, making even time seem slower. She had fallen asleep again, curled beside me, one hand beneath her cheek and the other loosely resting over my edge. Her fingers had grown still. Her breath, deep and even, moved through her in peaceful waves. And I, the pillow beneath her final dream, felt something new that night. It wasn't sorrow. It wasn't joy. It was something quieter, something sacred. I had been with her through nights of noise, crying babies, creaking floors, the whisper of secrets spoken too late. I had felt the weight of worry in her neck, the heat of fever in her temples, the cold touch of loneliness in the way she clutched me. But this night was different. There was peace in her body, stillness in her sleep, as if all the stories her mind had ever told her had finally ended, and the last page had been turned. Outside, the rain continued. It painted slow trails down the glass and made the world outside her room seem like a distant memory.
I imagined her childhood in a place like this, barefoot on a porch, listening to the rhythm of rain on old wood, watching her mother hang laundry under gray skies, laughing when the wind tried to steal a towel. I imagined her first love, the one who made her write poems she never read aloud, the one who gave her a paper rose and whispered, "Forever," even though both of them knew it wouldn't last past summertime. I imagined all of it, all the things I had never seen, all the moments I hadn't touched, and yet I felt them now, like echoes stitched into the softness of who she was. A faint scent of lavender drifted from her hair, mixed with something else, faint but real. Rain on warm stone, earth and sky meeting outside her window. I couldn't smell, not truly, but I remembered her saying once, "The rain always smells like beginnings." She never feared endings. I thought about that. Some people fear the dark, or the silence that follows laughter, but she never did. She always welcomed the unknown with open arms, like an old friend returning without warning. Maybe that's why, as her breathing slowed just a little more, there was no tension in her body, only softness, only surrender. A clock ticked in the distance, its rhythm steady, almost shy. I counted the seconds, not to mark time, but to honor it. Every tick was a memory, every moment a gift. I thought of the dreams I had carried for her, some light and fleeting like feathers drifting across dawn, others heavy and tangled, pulling her into places she feared to go. But she always woke up stronger, even when tears stained my fabric, even when her voice cracked in the dark. She faced each new day like it owed her nothing, and gave everything anyway. There was a time not long ago when she held the tiny creature on her chest, eyes shut tight, fists curled, skin pink and new. The baby cried and she sang, off-key, sleepy, but sweet. I remember how she whispered, "This is what forever feels like." And I caught that whisper in my seams and never let it go. The baby grew. The house changed. Seasons passed like pages flipped too fast, and still I remained, her pillow, the silent witness to all her becoming. Tonight, in the hush between raindrops, I felt something stir, not outside, but within her. A flicker, a flutter, like the wings of a moth brushing against a curtain, a memory rising to the surface. She murmured a name. I couldn't understand it. It was old, dusty, maybe forgotten, but it mattered to her. She smiled in her sleep, and I knew that wherever her dream was taking her, it wasn't far. Not this time, not away, just deeper, more inward, like walking backward through a hallway of laughter and tears, back into the rooms where the furniture never moved, and the air still smelled like cinnamon and song. I wanted to follow. I wanted to see what she saw, but I could only remain here, soft, silent, still. And then, just before the clock struck whatever hour the night had become, a sound so faint it could have been imagined filled the space around us. A heartbeat, but not mine, not hers, something older, something shared. The heartbeat of the house, perhaps, or the earth beneath it. Or maybe it was the dream itself, pulsing gently, carrying her forward. I did not know, but I did not fear it. I closed my eyes, though I had none. I breathed, though I had no lungs, and I waited, though I had no need for time, because I knew she was still dreaming, and in that dream she had not left me, not yet, maybe not ever.
Part 7. The Whisper Beneath the Stars. It was a quiet night again. The curtains barely moved, and the room was dimly lit by the soft blue glow of the moon. I could feel her head resting gently on me, her breathing steady, her dreams just beginning to take shape. She had cried earlier that day. Tears had soaked through my fabric, but I didn't mind. Pillows don't mind tears. We absorb them, like we absorb secrets, fears, and fragments of forgotten dreams. Tonight, something felt different. She was sleeping deeply, deeper than usual. Her body was still, and her heartbeat slow and calm. I felt her mind drift further and further from the waking world. I could almost follow her thoughts, like tiny whispers floating in the air. There were shapes forming in the dream world, shapes of trees, stars, music, and something else, something older. A memory began to play in her sleep. She was small again, just a girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, lying on a different bed with a different pillow. Her mother sat beside her, brushing her hair and humming a song that didn't have any words. The sound was soft and round, like circles drawn in the sky. "She used to sing this," the girl whispered in her sleep. "I still remember." The tune echoed in my stuffing. I remembered it too. She had hummed it once before, years ago, during a night full of thunder and worry. That song had stayed with her, and now it had returned. In her dream, her mother smiled and kissed her forehead. "Sleep well, little moon," she said. The words made something shift inside the dream. Suddenly, the scene changed. She wasn't a little girl anymore. She was back in her current room, but everything looked old, dusty, as if time had stopped for 100 years. The windows were broken, the air was cold, and stars twinkled through the ceiling. And then came the whisper. It wasn't from outside. It came from within. "Do you remember me?" it said. "Do you remember the promise?" The girl, now a woman, stood up in the dream, confused. "Who's there?" "I am the one you forgot, the part of you left behind." The stars above her pulsed gently, like they were breathing. She followed the sound. It led her through rooms that didn't exist, doors that weren't there before, and stairs that spiraled up and up into darkness. Yet she wasn't afraid, not tonight. I followed her thoughts. I felt the warmth of her memory and the chill of her fear. I stayed under her head, still and silent, my fabric soaking in her sleep. At the top of the stairs was a room with no walls, just stars, millions of them scattered in a sea of velvet black. And there, in the center of the sky, was a small bed, a child's bed. On it lay a younger version of her again, this time asleep. She walked closer, slowly, carefully, and when she touched the child's cheek, The younger version opened her eyes and smiled. "I missed you," she said, and they both cried. She sat on the bed, holding her younger self. Time folded in on itself. The stars spun gently above them, humming the same wordless lullaby her mother once sung. I felt her heartbeat shift in the real world. A sigh, a deeper breath. The dream continued. The child said, "You don't have to be afraid anymore. I'm still here." And just like that, the stars began to fall. Soft, gentle rain made of light. It fell all around them, but never touched them. It filled the air with a hum so peaceful, so tender, that even the dream began to sleep. Back in the real world, she rolled gently to the side. Her hand rested softly against her cheek, like the dream had left a trace. I could feel her smile, just the smallest curve of peace. She was safe again for tonight. I thought about how many nights I had spent beneath her, how many stories I had heard, how many fears I had plopped like raindrops in the dark. Pillows are like quiet friends. We don't speak, but we listen. We don't move, but we stay. We don't ask, but we remember. Tonight the dream faded slowly, like fog in the morning sun. The stars returned to their place in the sky. The child lay back down and closed her eyes, and the woman, now whole again, whispered, "Thank you." Whether she spoke to herself, to her dream, or to me, I'll never know. But I heard it, and I'll hold that whisper forever.
Part 8. The Dream That Took Her Back. The room was quiet. Only the slow rhythm of her breathing broke the silence. Outside, the moon hung heavy over the old town. A faint breeze tapped gently at the window, as if whispering an invitation. That night, she dreamed again. But this dream was different. It started with footsteps, soft ones, on an old wooden floor. The sound echoed gently in her ears. When she opened her eyes in the dream, she wasn't in her room. She was standing in a long hallway, lit by warm, golden light. The floorboards creaked under her feet, and the air smelled like old paper and dried flowers. "This place," she whispered. It was her grandmother's house, the one that had been sold years ago, the one she hadn't visited since she was 12. It stood in her dream exactly as she remembered it, maybe even more perfect. The wallpaper was faded but kind. The pictures on the wall hadn't changed. A photograph of her as a baby, another of her mother as a girl. She walked slowly, letting her fingers trail along the wall. It felt so real. She turned a corner, and there it was. The living room. Her grandmother's rocking chair sat by the window. The sunlight through the curtains danced on the floor, and there, on the little table, was the red candy bowl, still full. She smiled softly and picked up a candy. "You always liked the cherry ones," a voice said behind her. She turned. Her grandmother stood there just like before, wearing her soft gray sweater with that gentle smile and tired but bright eyes. The woman didn't speak again. She only opened her arms, and she walked into them. No words were needed. The hug said everything. It smelled like old books, lavender and fresh bread. Tears filled her eyes. "She miss you." Her grandmother touched her cheek. "I know." Then the dream began to move. The house around them shifted. Walls faded like mist, and suddenly she was outside, in the backyard where she used to play. The swing set was still there, the treehouse, even the old orange ball. She was a child again. She ran barefoot through the grass, laughed, fell, got up again. The air was warm, birds sang, time had stopped. The scene flickered like an old film reel. Suddenly she was older, sitting on the back steps with her teenage diary in her lap, writing dreams, hopes, fears. Then older again, standing by the gate, saying goodbye to the house for the last time. Tears welled up in her eyes. "She thought I forgot this place," she whispered. "You didn't," a voice said. She turned. It wasn't her grandmother this time. It was her mother. Young, alive, smiling. The sight of her made my heart stop. She couldn't speak. Her lips trembled. Her mother stepped forward and took her hands. "You carry this place with you," she said gently. "You carry all of us." They sat on the old porch swing. The sun was setting in the dream. The sky turned orange, then pink, then a deep purple. And the stars came out. As they sat, the wind picked up slightly. I felt her pillow, me, beneath her head, even in the dream. I held her gently, catching every silent tear she shed. Her mother whispered stories, ones she hadn't heard in years. Some were dreams, others were memories. The line between them faded. A cat walked by. Not just any cat. It was Marble, the tabby they had when she was 6. He rubbed against her legs and purred. "He missed you," her mother said with a small laugh. She picked him up and held him close. His fur was warm, real. And for a moment, all the lost things were found again. All the people she had loved, all the things she had said goodbye to, they were here. Not gone, just waiting. Her grandmother, her mother, her old cat, her childhood home. She stood in the dream one last time and looked around. She didn't feel sad, not now. She felt full. Then a soft voice came again. It was me, the pillow beneath her head. I whispered, not with words, but with presence. "It's time." The wind wrapped around her like a soft blanket. The dream began to dim. The house faded, the stars blurred, and she began to rise. When she opened her eyes again in the waking world, there were tears on her cheeks, but she was smiling. She touched me softly and whispered, "Thank you." And I, who had watched over her so many nights, knew something had changed. She had gone back. She had remembered. And sometimes remembering is a kind of healing. Part 9. I was the pillow beneath her final dream. I remember the silence of that night. It wasn't like the silence of an empty room or a quiet street. No, it was a deep, warm silence, like a gentle pause in a soft song, or the calm that wraps you before a dream begins. She was asleep, her head resting on me like always. But this night felt different. The air around her was lighter, softer, almost glowing. I could feel something in her breath. Not sadness, not fear, but peace. A soft kind of peace that doesn't come often in life. She sighed, and her body relaxed fully into the bed. I think she was already stepping into the dream before the dream even began. And then it started. In the dream, she was standing at the edge of a forest. The trees were tall and golden, their leaves glowing like sunlight trapped in petals. The sky above was not blue, but a soft lavender, like twilight before the stars appear. She was barefoot, her dress flowing like quiet water around her ankles. There was a path made of soft moss and petals. She looked around, calm, curious, and not alone. By her side was her old dog, Benny. His tail wagged like he had just found her again after years apart. She laughed, the kind of laugh that only comes from a place deep inside the heart. The kind you laugh when you see someone you've missed more than anything. Benny barked softly and started walking. She followed him, slowly, with the wind playing with her hair. The trees whispered stories as she passed. Not words exactly, but feelings, shaped like wind. The path led to a small wooden bridge. Under it, a quiet stream flowed. She leaned down, touched the water, and saw not her reflection, but moments, clear images in the stream. She saw herself as a little girl holding her mother's hand, walking to school. She saw her teenage self dancing in her bedroom when no one was watching. She saw the day she fell in love for the first time, and the moment she let that love go. She didn't cry. She smiled, as if finally everything made sense. On the other side of the bridge was a field of flowers, soft blues, pale pinks, warm whites. And in the middle of that field stood a tree she had drawn many times as a child, the same one from her school notebooks, the tree with the crooked branch and the heart carved into its bark. And sitting beneath that tree was her grandmother. Her grandmother opened her arms, and she ran into them, laughing and crying at the same time. "Oh, I've missed you," she whispered. "I never left," the grandmother said, her voice like warm tea on a cold day. They sat together, hand in hand under the dream tree. No need for questions, no need for answers, just presence, just love. I could feel her heart from where I lay beneath her dreaming head. It was calm, safe, full. Later, as the sky above turned to a deeper purple, stars began to appear, not fast, not bright, but slow and soft, like the opening of tiny eyes in the sky. Her voice came from the stars. It wasn't loud, it wasn't even spoken, but it filled the air like perfume. It said, "You are safe. You are home. You are home." She looked up. Her eyes sparkled, and I could feel it, not just as a pillow, but as something more. That this dream was different. It was deeper than the others, more final, yet more free. Suddenly she stood in a field that looked like her old bedroom. Yes, it was a dream, but somehow it was a memory, too. There was the lamp with the little birds on it, the chair her father used to sit on while reading, the bookshelf that held her favorite fairy tale books. The bookshelf opened on its own. Inside were stories not written in ink, but in light. Each page was a day from her life. Some pages were bright, some pages were dim, but none were missing. All there, all part of her. She closed the book, hugged it to her chest, and whispered, "Thank you." Then the room changed again, Now she was in a garden filled with pillows, soft ones, old ones, new ones, glowing ones. And in the middle of that garden was me. I was not just the small pillow on her bed. In the dream, I was taller, wider, brighter. I was made of all the dreams I had carried for her, all the nights I had held her tears, all the hopes I had soaked in when she had no one else to speak to. She walked toward me, smiled, and said, "You have always been here, haven't you?" And I said, not with words, but with warmth, "Always." She laid down in that garden, resting her head on me once more. Around her the stars began to drift downward like snowflakes made of light. And then came the song. A gentle lullaby, one she hadn't heard since childhood. Her mother used to hum it while brushing her hair long ago. She didn't know she remembered it, but her heart did. She began to hum along, and as she did, the world around her shimmered. The golden trees waved goodbye. The dog curled up beside her. The stream whispered, "Sleep well." The stars faded. The light softened. And in the quiet that followed, I felt her breath slow. Not in fear, not in pain, but in peace. She was dreaming still, not of places or faces, but of everything at once. She was safe. She was loved. She was free. I stayed beneath her head, as I always had. But now I was not just a pillow. I was a memory. I was comfort. I was part of her forever dream. And the dream was still going, even now.
Part 10. The Quiet Flight to Forever. I had always known my time with her would end. Pillows are not meant to last forever. But I never thought it would be like this, so soft, so peaceful, so full of quiet. The night had been long and gentle. The moonlight touched the room in silver lines, and outside the wind whispered like a lullaby. Inside, her breathing had slowed to the rhythm of the ocean, deep, soft, and steady. I was beneath her cheek, still warm with memories. She had been dreaming again. I could feel it in the way she smiled in her sleep. Tiny smiles, like a child remembering something sweet. I didn't know what her dream was, but I could tell it was something kind. Maybe she was walking in a field again. Maybe she was holding someone's hand. Maybe she was flying. The weight of her thoughts was lighter than ever. That heavy sadness she used to carry, the grief, the loneliness, it had slowly melted away over the nights. Little by little, night after night, I had felt it drain out of her and vanish into the dark. Her tears had stopped. Her silence had changed. She no longer lay awake in fear. She had found peace, and I had helped. I was not a special pillow, just cotton, stitches, and a faded cover. But I had stayed. I had listened. I had carried her pain when it was too much for her. I had caught her tears and held her warmth. I had been a home for her head when the world felt too heavy. And now I could feel something new, a kind of goodbye. She did not move much that night. Her breath had become quiet, too quiet, and still she looked peaceful. Her hand was relaxed on the blanket. Her shoulders were not tense. She looked like someone who had finally found the place she had been searching for. There was no fear, no struggle, just stillness. And I knew
This was her last sleep. But it was not sad, not like I thought it would be. It felt like the end of a song that had played its final note, a soft landing, a warm hush. For a while nothing happened. The world did not rush in, no alarms, no tears, just light slowly entering the room like a kind guest opening the curtains. Later, footsteps came, gentle, careful. A voice whispered her name, and again. Then silence. Then a soft sob. But even in that moment, I could feel a strange peace around us, like she had given something beautiful to the world in her sleep, a kind of calm, a quiet strength. She had left her pain behind. I stayed beneath her, still warm, still holding her. I wanted to hold her just a bit longer. They came and moved her, gently, with respect. They folded the blanket, they closed her eyes, they touched her hand with love. Someone picked me up. They looked at me. I could see the memory in their eyes. They didn't cry. They just held me close, maybe remembering the nights I had spent with her, maybe feeling that warmth still in my fabric. They didn't throw me away, no. They placed me in a small wooden box, carefully, with her favorite scarf and a letter she had written years ago. They closed the box and kept it. I am still there, quiet, still, waiting. And sometimes I feel someone open the box. A hand touches me. A smile appears. I am not just a pillow now. I am a memory. I am the softness that stayed, the quiet that listened, the final breath beneath her final dream. And maybe, just maybe, in some way I don't understand, she is still dreaming, and I am still there with her. The end and the beginning.